Do people tell you that your kids only hit you because of your parenting style? This is so common, and it's not true. But I think that when we're worried about whether maybe we are doing the wrong thing, it's kind of difficult to really stay solid in our belief that it's not our fault unless you have actually seen the unpacking of what is actually causing the problem, so that you can be really truly sure what's going on is not the cause of your parenting. So if we look at how children might hit, let's use an example where a child is hitting only you, not the other parent, no siblings, no friends, nobody else, they're only hitting you. And this is a typical example for something that other people will say it's because you're not strict enough on them. And what we really want to do is break down what that means. So it is true that the reason they're hitting you and not anyone else is that they are not afraid of the reaction you're going to have. And honestly, that's a good thing, right? And it doesn't necessarily mean that we need to control the rest of the world to make sure that no matter what their behavior is, that it would be accepted. What we want to be able to do is help our children understand what is driving the hitting, like what's underneath of it, and then helping them to find a healthier way to get that done. Because if we think about hitting, there isn't actually an example of a time where a child would hit and they actually get what they need. And I know that some of the ways our culture speaks about children in particular, but also just humans in general, is that we only don't do bad things because we're told not to. And that's actually just not true. When we look at the need of a child underneath hitting, actually hurting somebody, or even if they're tiny and it doesn't actually hurt yet, it's not actually getting the need met. So common needs that hitting meets is knowing that they matter, that they're important to you because they can get you to really stop what you're doing and pay attention to them. It can be a need to feel heard. So if they can't get across what's important to them, then they might want you to really recognize that what's important to them is not actually being listened to. And it can be connection. It can also be fun. We see this in some really tiny kids where they're hitting because they think it's hilarious and they're actually looking for a way to have fun. And at some point they've hit somebody and it was funny to them in some way. So either they might have been tiny and we've laughed because it was a little bit funny, so they think it's hilarious. Or alternatively, maybe even if we gave a reaction that was clear to them that we're not okay with it, there was something about the interaction that they thought was hilarious, and now they've got an association with, I can have fun if I hit somebody. So now, if we look at those underlying needs, and there can be a few others, but these are the most common ones for a child that's hitting, hurting somebody is actually not going to get those needs met. It is the next best way that their brain knows how to figure out figure out how to get what they need. It's the next best way. But what we need to help our child to understand is what it is that they need and how do we help them to get it in a way that actually works. And this is why you'll see methods like timeout are often ineffective for hitting, because when we're putting a child in timeout, we're effectively saying, whatever it is that you need, it doesn't matter. You need to know not to hit people. And so for a child who's already at the point where their needs are so intense that they're lashing out in order to get them met, it's just not going to work. And if we think about that example with the child that thinks hitting is hilarious, well, what are they going to do with a timeout? Often they're going to find a different way to make timeout hilarious. So how far can I move off the chair while still being technically on the chair? Or how far can I move the chair before somebody notices? Or how many times can I run away and people will try and catch me and bring me back to the timeout spot, right? So you can see how it's not actually going to get to a place where the child is actually getting their needs met. And so what we want to do with a child that's hitting is actually don't wait until the hitting is happening, but just thread through your days as often as possible some awareness of what's going on for them and what they need. So if you need to say no to your child, first look at what it is that they need. So that's below what they're asking for. So I'm asking for you to play with me, but is that because I need connection time because we haven't had much time today or the last couple of days? Or am I asking you to spend time with me because I'm bored and I don't know how to have fun on my own? So those are two different needs. Is it actually connection, or is it that I need fun and you're the best way for me to get that fun? So we're peppering through the day. I can see what it is that you need. And so your child gets a more awareness of what their own needs are, so that then they're better able to communicate them, and then the need to hit doesn't come up as often. So we also want to be looking at when they do hit, we want to do some replays with them. So after everybody's calmed down, it's going, so sweetie, at what point did you realize that you were off track? Like, did you only realize when you hit me, or was there something that happened before that where you realized I'm not okay? Right? So we're getting them to build up that awareness of things are off track. What do I need to get back on track? And the last thing I'd recommend is really looking for validating the need and validating the emotion. But instead of that, I don't even recommend talking about the behavior until you've tried just talking about what would be a strategy in that moment to get that need met. So you really wanted me to sit and play Legos with you, and I had to go and have a cup of tea. You really wanted us to spend some time together because we just haven't had as much time in the last couple of weeks. Yeah, and you felt so frustrated that I wasn't sitting down for even longer because you really miss me. So you can see how I always use a lot of words. You don't have to use a lot of words, but you can see how I'm validating what is the need. I'm demonstrating that I understand their perspective. Like I'm saying, the last couple of weeks have been so busy, we haven't had time to connect. And then the next step I would say is the reason I needed to get up and have a cup of tea is I was just feeling so tired, and a cup of tea helps me to feel better. And then you'd be looking at how can they get that connection. So maybe it was as soon as I'd made the cup of tea, I was going to come back, or maybe it's, you know what, I just don't have the energy for Lego anymore today, but we could sit on the couch and snuggle and watch Bluey while I have my cup of tea. Right, so we're looking for how do we get that need met. Now, for some kids, you will need a little bit of a transition time where we do talk about the negative impacts of the hitting. But for the vast majority of kids, when you validate the feeling, validate the need, and come up with a strategy that will work to get your child what they need, the hitting just disappears of its own. And a lot of people will point out that people need to understand right from wrong. And like that is true, but ultimately, if we make our children really skillful at getting their needs met, they're just not going to be doing the behaviors that negatively impact on other people anyway. And the vast majority of kids, they understand the impact on other people. It's just that they can't see any other way to get what they need, and they're feeling overwhelmed in that moment. So the more we can help them to have that emotional awareness, the problem will disappear anyway. So I hope this has been really helpful. And if you'd like to go through some of the more in-depth step-by-step processes of how I help you to figure out what is the need underneath the hitting, how we can talk to our child in that moment, and how we can embed those strategies that work, then come grab the recording of my next webinar, which is helping your child stop hitting. And that one you can get at jodithornton.com/hitting. And in that webinar, we're really going to go into the practical step-by-step. What do you do to help your child unpack what is going on underneath of the hitting, and how do they get a strategy that's more healthy, obviously less impact on other people, but also for themselves to actually get more of what they need. So I hope this has been really helpful in allowing you to let go of the idea that maybe it's your parenting that's causing the hitting. It just isn't. Like I promise, it's not your parenting that's causing it. As I mentioned at the beginning, definitely your parenting is making your child unafraid of your response. that's actually a good thing. We don't want to parent from fear. We don't want it's not like it's not helpful for their emotional development, but it's also not helpful for their recognition of like what makes for a healthy relationship. Is it that we only do the right thing if we're afraid of the reaction we're going to get? That's not really the most healthy way to have a relationship. So if you have any questions, please feel free to pop them in the comments of the video, and I will see you next time.